Alrighty, so I got what I think is a real fun one here. I'm going to be talking about all the leaders that are getting better with the release of Secrets of Power. We now have the full set revealed, so it's time to take a deep look at what's getting upgraded from the previous sets, right? We talk a lot about the new leaders and the new cards, but, a lot of the time, the things that benefit the most are actually things from the earlier sets. So that's what this is all about. We're going to see a lot of leaders from the previous set paired with a lot of the new cards in Secrets of Power. Before we get going, please hit that subscribe button. And if you're interested in some more content from me, including what is now a live spoiler deck list collection, do check out my Patreon. I got a lot of things going on there. All right, so what this is going to be, like I said, going to discuss the leaders from set 1 through 5 that are getting help with the release of Secrets of Power. And this does not just include a list of meta leaders or top leaders. I want to talk about some off-meta stuff that might interest you that is maybe getting an upgrade. I'm going to separate this into 3 main sections. Quick hitters, which is mostly leaders that are not getting a ton, but I just wanted to point out a few things. Then a big topic about the pilots, because there's a lot to say about the pilot leaders with the release of Secrets of Power. And then finally, the rest. Every non-pilot leader that is getting a decent amount of help with this set. The goal here is to help you brew, to help you update decks, to help you check out some leaders that maybe you haven't been interested in the past, but could be now that we're getting some new cards for them. So let's dive right in. Quick hitters right here. We've got Bo-Katan and Captain Phasma. So one card for each, but Warrior of Clan Ordo is a really solid Mandalorian unit, and FN Trooper Corps, specifically with Captain Phasma, is interesting because, you flip your captain on the same turn that you can plot this Trooper Corps. It will turn Captain Phasma into a 5/7 while also triggering her ability to deal damage because you've played a First Order unit that turn. Do I think these become super meta leaders? Absolutely not, but they both get a nice little upgrade for anyone who's interested in playing with these leaders. They just got a little better, gonna have a little more to do with them. And let's take a look here. We've got a couple more, and all 3 of these cards, Wrong Ride, Imperial Dark Trooper, and Screeching TIE Fighter, you're gonna see on other lists, but for Grand Moff Tarkin and for Supreme Leader Snoke, all 3 of these cards could be potential upgrades. Basically, these leaders operate as sort of like a cheese-out style green-yellow deck a lot of the time. And, well, this helps them. You got another turn 1 play that can get buffed with experience by either of these leaders. You've got a very solid turn 1 play in the Imperial Dark Trooper. Happens to be Imperial, which helps Grand Moff Tarkin. It's just a 3/3 for 2. It's just a Battlefield Marine that villains get to play now. And Wrong Ride is a very good card at preventing interaction, which is a lot of what these leaders want to do in the first place. They often just try to cheese out victories in space and things like that. So if you're building them as sort of yellow-green style, primarily space, but not entirely aggro deck, you get some upgrades here. If you're building them in some other colors, of course, you still probably play this Dark Trooper, but the yellow stuff, not so much. And one more quick hitter. Django! Yeah, he's suspended. Good, because AAT Incinerator specifically is another one of these cards that would just exhaust the entire board. But yeah, I just thought this was funny. Alright, let's get into the pilots. And the pilot stuff is split up into 2. And you're going to see first what I call the Cinta pilots. These are the pilots that cost 6, essentially, because Cinta costs 6. You're usually not going to delay a pilot's flip turn to wait for Cinta, so the cheaper pilots probably aren't benefiting that much from her, but the 6-drop pilots do. And I've spent a lot of time talking about this card in some other videos. It's crazy good. It's one of the best cards, if not the best card in this entire set. It's going to create a lot of problems when a pilot flips onto a vehicle, plays Cinta, hits your base for 9, while also keep putting a 5/5 on the ground, all in one action, kind of potentially making you have to claim early, sets up huge potential for these pilots. So That's going to be true regardless of which pilot I'm talking about. Cinta is a core piece here. It's not only good in these pilot decks, but that's probably where it's going to shine the most. As for Boba specific stuff, Aggressive Negotiations, another card that, well, maybe isn't Boba specific. This is another one of probably the best cards in this set. It does insane amount of damage. It works wonderfully well with plot because it means you're not spending a card from your hand when you're playing a plot like Cinta. So it's one extra card that you get to hold in your hand for when you want to use Aggressive Negotiations. So, you know, you do that Cinta thing, you hit for 9, you claim, you get to Aggressive Negotiations, maybe it's a 3-cost deal 5 or something, and you're just like 2-turning your opponent. So that's crazy good. And lastly, now this is a very Boba specific thing, is Topple the Summit. This is a wild card with Boba because Boba gets to deal damage, spread damage around when he flips. So you can sequence that with Topple the Summit to do potentially up to 4 damage to 4 different units if you ping 4 different things and then do the topple. But of course, you could also like kill a 6 health unit by putting 3 into it and then put 1 into something else, and the topple will finish off the 6 health unit. Whatever it may be, it's incredibly flexible. It also puts your opponent in sort of a bind because, hey, do they need to worry about Cinta? Do they need to worry about topple? These are very different effects, and Boba now has access to both of them in this flip. So these are some big upgrades, and the topple specifically is not going to be something that shines so much in the other leaders, but very much with Boba. Another one, Asajj Ventress, and, you know, I put Cinta and Aggressive Negotiations. It's basically the same thing, but I think where this is going to benefit Asajj maybe differently is that she often can deal more damage in that one shot than even Boba can, because she's a leader that would actively play Scimitar, which is a unit that can attack for 6 if it has damage on it. So that now becomes a 10 damage hit with Asajj, or maybe even more. As great, I think 11. I think you can do 11 if there's 1 damage already on the Scimitar. Then Asajj can do another one to it. If there's even more damage on the Scimitar, forget it. You can do crazy amounts of damage, but this might help Asajj become relevant, right? You got Aggressive Negotiations here as well. These are fantastic cards that pair with any of the 6-cost pilot leaders, and they all need to be taken seriously to see which one might end up being elevated the most. And the next Cinta pilot is Luke. And Luke, you know, his flip turn could be a different kind of deadly because he might actually kill something, a unit, while also attacking the base. So, because he gets his +3 damage ping, so to speak, when he attacks. So, of course, a huge buff for him here with Cinta. Some other stuff that you can look at in yellow. If you want to try to work on a yellow Luke, you have another 1-drop fighter here. You can go into more of a 1-drop spam version with yellow, something you can't really do with the other colors. And if you're in green, well, Trade Route Taxation is another pretty good plot card to play here because you don't always have Cinta. Trade Route makes Luke basically untouchable for a whole turn. It's going to turn off all events, which means things like Bamboozle, Rival's Fall don't work. He's already immune to upgrade removal, which means things like Disabling Fangfighter and the new Constable guy won't kill it. So it's kind of the only thing that would be able to interact with it would be like upgrade removal, which is like Entrench, that kind of effect. With Trade Route Taxation, you can also plot something else. There's a green buff that gives +2/+3. There's Sudden Ferocity. You'll have more resources left. So I think that's an interesting one to potentially include here with Luke. But all in all, these 3 pilots, their main buff here is Cinta. It's a crazy powerful card with these leaders, and we got to see how we'll need to combat it and how good these decks end up being. All right, now let's talk about the other pilots. Now, Darth Vader here is a 6-cost pilot. You can play him in red for Cinta. I still don't think that's going to end up being the correct way to go with Vader. The red stuff just doesn't seem as good as the yellow stuff overall. He now has access to 2 more 1-drops, and while they're not like major upgrades, both of these cards, A-Wing and Screeching TIE Fighter, are upgrades to cards that are already in the deck. So even if it's just marginal, it's going to matter. Wrong Ride, though, and Trade Route Taxation, which I just talked about with Luke, are pretty good buffs. So Trade Route Taxation is going to prevent all that interaction I just talked about. No more Bamboozle for a turn. You're going to get that hit off with Vader. Wrong Ride is just another one. Like, you flip, you can shut down your opponent a little bit. You're putting so much power into play, even though you're kind of down resources in that transaction. That might not matter if you've put up enough aggression. So these are pretty good plot cards with Vader. I think going to help. And yeah, with the addition of these 1-drops, I think Vader's going to be elevated a bit. All right, Kazuda. So what does he have going on for him? Well, Wrong Ride, just like Vader. I think you can do a flip turn like that. You basically give up your whole turn, but in many ways you might make your opponent give up their whole turn too, and you're flipping early. If you don't want to do that, you can do Galen Urso. I think that's going to be really good here because you're just going to be able to cheat out a decently sized unit, name something like Bamboozle so that your leader's just unaffected, or maybe you name an upgrade removal card that you know is in your opponent's deck, whatever it is, even if you don't see their hand. And, you know, Kazuda often plays things like Jam Communication, so you might already know what's in their hand, but Galen, I think, can really buff a 4-cost flip aggressive leader like Kazuda. Then we also have Blue Ace, and while I think Blue Ace might do more to counter pilot decks, it's still decent here. You get a good body. It's going to help you clear other space units that might be pressuring your space. In addition to that, once it's in play, Kazuda does turn off this ability, so like on the following turns, you won't have to worry about that downside. But it is just a good card, so I wanted to call it out here. It's not like specifically a Kazuda card, I would say. It's just a solid card. Next up, one of the biggest beneficiaries of the plot mechanic is the Han pilot. So yes, we get A-Wing. Nice. That's an upgrade. He was playing a lot of 1-drops, and this is a better one. We get aggressive negotiations, and this is an interesting one because Han sometimes has no cards in his hand when he's just spamming units. Sometimes he has a ton of cards in his hand. We play things like C-3PO and Boshek. So aggressive negotiations could fit here. It's an odd-costed card, so that's nice. And we're probably plotting, so we might be able to save some cards in our hand. But the real kicker here is the plot. And Wrong Ride I've talked about. It's going to be really nice to help weaken your opponent's turn in response to your flip turn. And Sudden Ferocity, really great here because this actually puts an odd costed permanent card into play, which means you're going to ready an extra resource. The way Han works, or the way plot works with Han, and plot in general, the way it works is when you flip your leader, you reveal every plot card that you intend to play for the turn, but you don't pay for them immediately. You then get to sequence your plot and any other when played, like your leader flip when played, however you choose. So you can flip your Han, play something like Sudden Ferocity with plot, then you can choose to activate Han's when played ability, ready all your resources, and then plot again. So if you revealed Sudden Ferocity and Wrong Ride, you can play both of them that way. Now, you can't play like 2 of one and 1 of the other because that's the way that math works is you're not going to be able to do like a 3 and then a 6. So because 5 resources is the max you'll ever have. So that's unfortunate. Even though you can generate like 9 or 10 resources in one turn with this leader, you can't actually play 3-cost plots, just the way like the readying works between one and the other, and you can't like float resources. But it's still incredibly powerful to do something like Sudden Ferocity, flip your Han, ready all 5, Wrong Ride, exhaust 2 of your opponents. You still have like 2 resources left over, and your opponent's 3, right? You're getting like an 8 or 9 resource turn to their 3 resource turn on that turn. Very, very powerful. So I expect to see a lot of plotting with this leader. All right, let's get into the rest. First up, Count Dooku. I put this Imperial Dark Trooper here just because it's a good turn 1 play. It's also a droid, which can matter for Invisible Hand. A card that's almost always played with Dooku. It's very good in a Dooku deck, so that's really nice that you just have a droid that you want to play on turn 1 that is also good off of Dooku. The biggest buff here is Mirage. You can play this on turn 2. It's a 3/7 that deals 3 to something. That's really good. Red has not usually been the pair for Dooku. I mean, Dooku's never been like a meta deck anyway, so it doesn't really matter what the pair was for it. But this is a pretty big upgrade. And the last one I want to call out is the Vutun Pala, the big separatist ship. So because it's a separatist, it can exploit. This can kind of cost 7 innately. If you're going to add more droids to the deck, like this Imperial Dark Trooper, it might be even cheaper. And then, yeah, Invisible Hand brings droids. So it's something to at least look at to see if there's some kind of synergy here. And you're going to see that card again right here, and that's with Admiral Piet. So I put this Dark Trooper again. Piet is an Invisible Hand deck. Also, it is often a droid-centric deck outside of the capital ships. So you can try the Vutun Pala there as well. Piet innately makes it 1 or 2 less, so it can be pretty cheap to play. And then also Fulminatrix. I don't think this is quite as good as Devastator, but it's nice to have like more copies of Devastator. This does deal 4 every time it attacks, so it's a little different, but it can't go base and it can't spread the damage around. But still, if you want like that 4th or 5th copy of your 8-drop big capital ship, you now have the option to play another one. All right, Mother Talzin. So what are the buffs here? I think specifically it's for yellow because yellow is the one that struggled filling out a full force curve. So this 2-drop, I don't know if it will be included in yellow, the Trace Acolyte, but you now have the option to play another at least decent rate force unit on turn 1. The big buff is Darth Treya. It's not like an amazing card, but it works pretty well with Talzin's ability. You can sometimes double activate her ability in 1 turn because of this unit. And most importantly, it's just a 3-drop force unit with 5 health. Something that was really missing from the Talzin curve. It really only had Shin Hati to play on turn 2 as a force unit, and now it has another solid one. Lastly, Cad Bane. I think this works decently well with Talzin because she shrinks units. So you can use her ability maybe, get something with 3 health down to 2, flip her, insta-kill it with the Cad Bane. It's just something to at least consider. It's probably one of the few plot cards I think work specifically well with her, but, you know, there might be some other ones too. So let's talk a little bit about Cad Bane. We always look for new Underworld cards, and basically every set we get some, and we got Punishing One. This one I think is just okay. I'm not sure this makes the cut, but it's an option. It kind of curves well with IG 2000, where you get to like paying everything, and then this will have a bunch of raid and can maybe finish something off. But the much bigger deal, I think, is Garindin. This card's really, really good. You know, it's not really a turn 1 play. You can do it in a pinch, but most of the time, this is going to be a really solid card later in the game. It works well with Bazine because Bazine is going to let you see their hand in the first place. I think the plot upside here is nice, but it is not what makes or breaks this card. I think this card is going to be pretty useful even outside of the turn you flip Cad. It's going to help against control decks, which is specifically Cad, especially Cad mid-range. Mid-range is worst matchup, is like blue-green villain control style decks. And Garindin will help there, being able to snipe things like Super Laser Blast or whatever it may be, keeping you up in card advantage. It works well with McClunky, where you get to kind of chain this card with Bazine. Now, these cards don't have a lot of power, but they cause a lot of mayhem with Cad Bane and like the repeated pings. So Garindin, real solid. I think Hondo is worth a try. I don't know if he's going to be amazing, but it's nice that he just pops out immediately when you flip your Cad and, you know, pumps that Cad up by 1 damage. So it's nice that it's an action cheat, so you might be able to like more easily maintain initiative going into your next turn because of the plot. And, you know, it puts a big body into play. It does the damage, right? You flip Cad, this Hondo comes out, deals 2 damage immediately with Cad's effect. So cool card. Not sure it's makes the cut. Garindin is the one that I think is the biggest upgrade here, but all are worth a try. All right, let's look at Emperor Palpatine now. I put the Imperial Dark Trooper here. I'm going to basically put that card next to any deck that can play it. I don't know if they'll all play it, but they're all going to at least think about playing a Battlefield Marine. Yellow gets Grand Moff Tarkin, which I think is really nice with Palpatine. He struggles, especially in the yellow version, against space decks. And here you got a unit that can just steal a space unit immediately. What's really nice about playing this a kind of card like this with Palpatine is Palpatine gets to then throw that card at their face. This is Change of Heart, but only for space units or vehicles. It's not even just space units, vehicles. With the other upside that you get a 2/6 body into play. So I think this is a solid card. It might not be a main deckable card, but it can help in certain situations. I think Fully Armed and Operational is a nice little plot card for Palpatine because, you know, his flip turn is enormous, but sometimes just a little too slow. But imagine you get to like flip, steal something, at the same time pay 1 for this, and then ambush like a 7 cost unit. Whatever that unit may be. Even the new Thrawn unit that captures something, right? You can cause so much mayhem on the board by getting another ambush. It doesn't have to be enormous. Maybe it's Legacy Run. You flip Palp, you steal something, you ambush a Legacy Run, you kind of wipe the board. I think this is going to be a pretty nice one to include with Palp. And of course, the Chancellor Palpatine unit. Who can say no to 2 Sentinels on your flip turn? With this leader, you get to steal something, you get to put 2 chump blockers, 2 Sentinels right in front of your opponent's ground force. You get some tokens for you to feed to Palpatine's draw ability. Lastly, Hyperspace Disaster. If you want to play Blue Palp, this is going to be a pretty useful card. This is another one you're going to see pop up in the rest of this video. I think a lot of decks are going to consider running this card and just not have to put nearly as much investment anymore against space decks, right? This, especially decks that can ramp, this is going to usually match up around the turn that your opponent is flipping like a 6-cost pilot. So, you know, maybe you take that giant hit, but you can still wipe the board. It comes down a turn earlier than Super Laser Blast, and of course, doesn't hit your own ground force. So it can be basically a one-sided board wipe against all those mono space pilot decks. All right, let's talk about Grand Inquisitor. And, well, his main upgrade here is Darth Traya. And I put Tragedy of Plagueis here just to explain. This is an infinite combo. It's a 2-card infinite combo. One of them has to be played out of Aspect. I think likely Darth Traya is the one you want to play out of Aspect. You play this in a blue deck so that you can pay 5 for either of these cards. You don't really want to pay 7 for Tragedy. But if you get Traya in play and you have 5 resources and you put Tragedy of Plagueis on her, the only way you can not win is if your opponent either debuffs Darth Traya so it doesn't do any damage, buffs her so that you can't use Grand Inquisitor's ability on it, or has hard removal, non-damage based hard removal for it. So, you know, it's very telegraphed. I don't know if this is actually going to be good, but it's an infinite combo that only takes 2 cards. You at least have to like be aware it exists. General Grievous is a cute little card with this guy. I don't think General Grievous is a very good card, but this is sort of like a way to make this a repeated deal 3 for 2. You play it, you ready it, you hit for 3. It's got hidden next turn. If they want to ram into this, it just goes back in your hand and you get to do it again. Is that good? Probably not, but it's interesting. And lastly, Wrong Ride. I include this in a lot of aggro style decks, and Grand Inquisitor is certainly that. You can flip your Grand Inquisitor, pay 3. Maybe your opponent can't insta remove him anymore, and you get to kind of go off with his ability. All right, so let's talk about Rey. Now, Rey got a lot. You got Mina Bonteri, maybe the best 2-drop we've seen. Just a really good card. Populous Advisor is fantastic. You can turn this into a 2/5 on turn 1. When your opponent starts hitting your base at any point in the game, this guy is going to pop up there and have Sentinel. Just seems really good. Captain Typho, one of the most pushed Sentinels we've seen in the game. It's just a 4/5 for 4 with Sentinel that also heals you when he's attacked. Queen Amidala, I'm not even certain is good enough for this deck, but it's something to at least consider. It puts a lot of cardboard into play, 3 units for the cost of 1. This unit, the unit itself, the 5/3, is pretty like impervious to being removed immediately. You got those spies that can absorb all that damage, so she's interesting. Mon Mothma, maybe a nice additional 7-drop for this deck. You know, this deck tends to have a bunch of units in play, so you can like action churn with them, get attack into things, and then Mothma can let them all attack again while also putting a pretty big restore unit into play. And lastly, Hyperspace Disaster, which I mentioned with Palp. It's going to keep coming up, but this seems really good in Rey that can let you kind of trim some of your anti-space tech. Just know you have this in your deck. You have a bunch of restore on the ground, you gum it up, and then when you're ready to go, you wipe that board, and bam, you can turn the corner against all these mono space decks. All right, let's talk about Qi'ra. So Qi'ra is getting this 3/3 Battlefield Marine, which maybe is good enough, maybe not. I'm going to save Cad for the end. Hyperspace Disaster, same with Rey, same with Palp. We got Condemn, a really solid new pseudo removal card. I think this might be better than it seems just because this can hit leaders. Any leader that hits for 6 or less damage is now just sitting there doing nothing. Its effects won't work on attack, so imagine playing this on like a Han leader, Han 1 specifically. It just completely shuts it down. You know, some leaders it doesn't do much against because they have effects that aren't on attack triggers, but they still just do no damage anymore. This is way better than Frozen and Carbonite because of that, as long as you can pay this disclose cost. So I think Condemn is solid, and there'll be other decks to look at it too. Topple the Summit, specifically for a red Qi'ra, is just basically a board wipe. When she flips, it will defeat every unit that has 6 or less health, including your own, except shielded units, of course. That's really good, and if you want to build like a hard control red Qi'ra, I'd say try it. It's gonna be a different take, similar to what the Bosk Blues of the world were, or the Iden decks. This is just Kira's version now, and now Qi'ra has a real card that kind of separates her from the rest of those decks, right? Before, not a lot of synergy, but this card is absurd with her because she also comes into play as a 7/1 when you do this. Now your opponent has to deal with her before they can kind of add on to the board, and this can really help bridge that gap for you to get into the late game where your like super laser blasts start coming online. So Topple Summit's great. But the biggest get for Qi'ra, and one of the biggest upgrades any leader from the previous sets has gotten with the set, is Cad Bane. This card is crazy powerful with her. It does the devastating gunship thing, except it does it without wasting an action. So you flip that Qi'ra, anyone who's played Qi'ra knows sometimes she just gets one shot, and that's not great. Well, you flip her, and you immediately Cad Bane the thing that was going to one-shot her, and all of a sudden you have 2 4-power units in play. You didn't even spend a card out of your hand, which insulates you a little more from discard effects. And next turn, you likely have a barrage target because you have 2 4-power units instead of 1 in play. You might have even protected your Qi'ra from being defeated that turn because of that Cad, because you had that action sheet. So Cad Bane is absolutely fantastic with Qi'ra. It's a solid card. It's not like broken anywhere else, but it's incredibly good with this leader. All right, Sabine. You see a ton of cards here. Now, they're not necessarily all going to make it, but I just wanted to call these out. Now, if you're going to move into like a non-rebel version of Sabine, potentially, you got another Battlefield Marine. You got a Warrior of Clan Ordo. You can include some of these plot cards like Unveiled Might instead of Darksaber because it's just an action sheet, right? Gives your opponent less time to interact before you put that buff on. You get the Naboo Royal Starship. Similar, right? It's giving raid. It doesn't buff her health, but it puts another unit into play. Same with Jar Jar, and Jar Jar is like one of the best anti-power the dark side cards in the game because it's just this really useless unit that also buffs something else. It comes out of your resource row when you flip your leader. It's a solid one. You got Kazuda here, a solid 4-drop. He got a lot of health. If you stop resourcing, he can swing for 6. We've got aggressive negotiations as well for this kind of deck. It might not be as potent here as it is in some other lists, but it's a pretty big pump. And then we also have Karis and Nemik's Manifesto, or Karis, Nemik, and Nemik's Manifesto. Before we get to them, one other note. Some of these cards are not heroic, including aggressive negotiations. So there's a world where maybe you move off of for a cause to play some of these other things. You have to consider that. But Nemik is a 3/2 hidden. I don't love the 3/2 stat line, but when he dies, he does just turn into a readied spy. That's a pretty useful thing to have. Just a unit that dies into another unit. You have to make sure that you are playing a lot of red cards so that you can actively trigger this disclose. And his Manifesto, I don't know if this is that good. Sabine decks don't typically go that wide, but if you do end up in a go wide, and this has to be still a rebel version, this card is like a 1 cost +1/+1 that might deal an extra 3 damage or 2 damage or something when they defeat the unit, because it's 1 for every rebel you control. So it could be an interesting build around and worth at least trying. So Sabine has a lot of new options, a lot of new tools, can guide a lot of different directions. Sabine is probably still just going to be the premier hero aggro deck, or at least ground-based aggro deck, non-pilot. We do have some new leaders like Luthen and Cassian. I don't think they're going to encroach on Sabine's dominance here, unfortunately. They're just more expensive leaders with, frankly, less good abilities. So, Sabine, probably still going to be around until that rotation hits. Next up, we got Anakin, and specifically, I've found some green stuff that work well with him. Now, first of all, Cinta. He is not a pilot, but he often hits just as hard as pilots do. This could be very good with Anakin. Aggressive negotiations, same thing. I kind of include those cards together a lot of the time because of that synergy I explained, where you're not spending a card to plot. Next turn, you just have 2 chunky units in play and a target for aggressive negotiations. But green stuff. Trader taxation. This can help against control decks. Just brick their turn, theoretically, especially if they're event heavy. We got Mina Bonteri. Of course, this card is going to go into a green Anakin. It's just a 2/4 that can hit for 4 with Anakin and draw you a card. We've got Captain Typho as well. I think he's just a fantastic ground sentinel. And Nemec, which I just mentioned in Sabine, is probably even better in this deck because now you have a unit that can attack for 5, theoretically, if you need it to. You also have a spy that when this dies can attack for 4 because of the raid plus Anakin's ability. So you get 2 ways to kind of utilize, 2 units to utilize Anakin's ability on. You just have to make sure you're got enough red cards, right? Disclose is not free. Remember that. It's not automatic. You do have to tailor your deck a little bit. Now, it's not a heavy disclose cost, but it is a disclose cost. All right, let's just talk about Thrawn now. We got some blue stuff. Creditor's Claim. This does double trigger, so if your opponent is going wide with low health units, Creditor's Claim, when that unit dies, you get to kill both of them. That's nice. I don't know if it's good enough, but it's at least something worth trying. Same with the Senate Warden. It gives a when defeated, gives an experience. 2 experience is nice. Now, this is a 2/2 for 2, so it's not really a turn 1 play because you're not going to have another unit in play. If you're going first, you can do it because you can just immediately play your 3-drop or something, and then if the Senate Warden dies, you get to buff it. But it could just be something that squeezes in later into turns. It's a pretty good thing to rip out of Cobb Vanth if you're playing the green version. But I wanted to address the red stuff a little more because this is like a bit newer, and the Imperial Occupier is very, very good with Thrawn because just 2 spies when it dies is great. Admiral Ozzel, which is not actually from Secrets of Power. This is from the Battle of Hoth, like, intro learn to play set. But it's interesting that it has a card that we may need for Thrawn if Red Thrawn is going to be good. He just pillages your opponent when he dies, and he costs 3, so you got a 3/1 that pillages. It's pretty strong. And then we have Arinda Price, and I don't know if this is any good, but if you're playing like a red burn style Thrawn deck, you've got all the indirect damage stuff that punches to the base. You got things like Ruthless Raider. If you're just trying to like burn, this can come down and theoretically blow up 8 damage at your opponent as long as you have the units to spare. And you have Chimera, which, Chimera can trigger her. She can then blow up the Chimera with her first when defeated and then blow up one of the TIE fighters with the second when defeated. Spending a lot of resources, but you do 8 damage to your opponent, and Arinda Price is still in play at that point. So if she dies, you can do another 4. That's a lot. So it's something to at least consider. I don't know if like Red Thrawn will get there, but it's something to look at, and I think it's at least interesting. All right, those were all of them. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at some of the leaders that are getting some help. I'm sure I missed some leaders that are getting better and some cards that are, good in them. Couldn't get everything on here, but I wanted to give you some early ideas for how to upgrade some of the decks from the previous seasons before you also take a look at some of the new leaders. I will, of course, be kind of doing a full leader recap for Secrets of Power coming up, where I talk about, basically it's a tier list for them and talk about all the synergies I can find with them. We'll be doing like a best card review from Secrets of Power, maybe also discuss the legendaries, although Spoiler, they're not that exciting. But yeah, lots of new Secrets of Power content coming up. Some of it, of course, will be on Patreon, where you can find a lot of early deck builds and then my more tuned deck list once the set fully reveals. And yeah, let me know what you think. And until next time, take care.